16th of June will be the prelims examination of this year's UPSC Civil Services. And I know most of you will be wrapping up your preparation, trying to give your best shot on that day. Here I am trying to assist you in that endeavor. Today will be the beginning of a 40-day series, 40. Starting from today, every single day for the next 40 days at 6 p.m. you will see a video here where I will be trying to cover up all the important current affairs from each and every subject from the last 1 year. So you don't have to go through any of the materials that you might have accumulated. You don't have to buy anything else. Just be here, be attentive. The best part is I will be happy to share the PDF of these classes as well. All that you need to do to get that PDF is to join my Telegram channel. I have given the link of the Telegram channel in the description of the video. Join that and you can get the PDF as well so that you can revise it later on as well. Again, I will be covering each and every subject, whatever can be asked by the UPSC in as crisp form as possible. Today is class number 1 and today we will be discussing important personalities that were in the news in the past 1 year, news regarding literature, sculptures and also some health related news stories. So without any further ado, let's begin with the very first one. So we are starting with important personalities. These are mostly historical personalities who were either mentioned in important speeches by the Prime Minister or the President of India, or who had their 100, 200 or 500 years birth or death anniversary in this year. So we are starting with Rani Durgavati. The reason why she is relevant this year is this year marks 500 years anniversary of Rani Durgavati. Also, she was in the news because the Madhya Pradesh government started something called the Rani Durgavati Gaurav Yatra, and that again put limelight on the life and legacy of Rani Durgavati. So as I said, 500 years anniversary means she was born in 1524. The reason why she is well known is for her braveness that she showed while fighting against the Mughals. She lost her life while fighting with the Mughals in the 16th century. She fought with Baz Bahadur, who was the Sultan of Malwa, and this Sultan was eventually defeated by Akbar. She has been written in glorifying terms by a lot of historians. Most prominently, Abul Fazl has also written about her. He says in Akbarnama that Durgavati was a combination of beauty, grace, manlike courage and bravery. So do remember her name. This is the statue that has been installed by the Madhya Pradesh government. Second, there are two important personalities, both of them in the news. Why? Very importantly, both of them were mentioned by the Honorable President of India in her speech. So the President of India, when she was addressing the country, as the President does on the eve of the Independence Day, in her speech she talked about two very important ladies that played an important role in India's freedom struggle. First, Matangini Hazra, and second, Kanaklata Barua. Now these two are not related to each other, please understand, but both of these were spoken about in the President's address. First, Matangini Hazra, an old lady by the time that she died. Most prominently, she was known for taking part in the Quit India movement. In the Quit India movement in 1942, she led a large procession of about 6,000 people. The idea was to take over the Tamluk police station in Bengal. This march was resisted by the authorities. In that resistance, she was shot and killed. She was born in 1869. She had earlier taken part in other such movements as well, led by Mahatma Gandhi. That's why Congress also used to call her the Old Lady Gandhi. As you can see here, the Congress shared this. This was a lady who had played a very important role in India's freedom struggle, mainly to encourage women to take part in large numbers in the Indian freedom struggle. The second important personality mentioned by the President of India in her speech was Kanaklata Barua. Now, in contrast to the last lady, she was a very young lady when she lost her life. She was just 17 years old. She led a group called the Mrityu Bahini, who was a group of freedom fighters. They again took part in the Quit India movement and lost her life during that struggle in Assam. She was confronted by the police. This is not the first time that she has been remembered by our leaders. In fact, in 2020, a Coast Guard vessel was also named after her as a tribute to her. So do remember her name as well. Another important personality that was in the news and a rebellion related to him was Alluri Sitaram Raju. The President of India attended 125th year anniversary of Alluri Sitaram Raju in Hyderabad, well known as a legendary freedom fighter of that region. He famously fought against the British when the British wanted to take over the land of the farmers in this area. Now in this area, most of the farmers practiced shifting cultivation. Now as you know, in shifting cultivation, the farmers move from one place to the other place. The British had this problem with shifting cultivation. When you move from one place to the other, it becomes difficult for the authorities to then take tax from you, to keep a track of you. So they don't want people moving from one place to the other. And that is why there was a lot of protest against this British action in this area. Anyways, he led a guerrilla campaign against the British in the Eastern Ghat area, which is today's Andhra Pradesh. He was also regarded as a hero of the jungle, or Manyam Virudu. Do remember this name as well. He is very famous for leading the Rampa rebellion of 1922 to 1924. The rebellion ended with his death. He was killed by the British forces in May of 1924. But do remember the name of this rebellion as well. Again, it all started with the British imposing certain restrictions on how the land can be used, mainly by those farmers who used to practice shifting cultivation. It started with the Madras Forest Act of 1882, imposing restrictions on the movement of the tribals. Next important personality, all of you would have read about him, Swami Dayanand Saraswati. It's his 200th year anniversary this year. I'm sure all of you have already read a lot about him in a lot of detail. Founder of the Arya Samaj, he was a great proponent of the Vedic Dharma. He did not really oppose the caste system, but he took the help of the Vedas to argue that the caste system should be based on merit. There can be a hierarchy, but it should not be based on the hereditary structure as we had at that time in the society. He also opposed evils such as untouchability. He said that the dominance of the Brahmins should be challenged. He was a great supporter of women education and wanted them to oppose practices such as child marriage, which he also did in large number. He's famous for making a lot of reforms in India's history. For example, he was the one who first gave this theory of Swaraj being India for Indians in 1876. Even today, he is well known among students as well, mainly because of the educational legacy that he left. The DAV schools, famous all around the country, the Dayanand Anglo-Vedic schools, were his idea. They came into existence in 1886 to realize his vision. He also wrote the famous book called Satyarth Prakash, which contributed to people awakening and arising about the idea of the Indian freedom struggle. Lot of very prominent people used to follow his thoughts and vision, including Sri Aurobindo and Dr. S. Radhakrishnan, India's first Vice President. Next important personality, Rani Chennamma. Again important because her rebellion also completed 200 years this year. She became the queen of Kitturu, that is in Karnataka. In short, the problem that she had with the British was the British, using the doctrine of lapse, wanted to take over her entire kingdom. Because she did not have a living son of her own, the family had adopted someone from outside. The British, as you know, did not agree to this. This was the entire point of doctrine of lapse, that if the ruler passes away, ruler does not have a real born son of their own, then the property, the empire will be taken over by the British. Adopted son will not count. This again became one of the reasons for rebellion against the British on multiple fronts, and Rani Chennamma was also one of those. The British East India Company tried to capture the entire territory, leading to what you call as a Kittur Rebellion of 1824. Now interestingly, it was one of the first rebellions against the British, way before what you call as the First War of Indian Freedom Struggle of 1857. Also, it was interesting because it was led by a women leader, one of the first women-led anti-colonial struggles, not just in India, but around the entire world. It was not successful. The British overpowered her army. She was captured, jailed, where she died in 1829, a few years later. These are the important personalities in the news. Again, as you can see, I am not delving too deep into things that you don't need to know. We are specifically focusing on facts that you need to know for the prelims examination, because I don't want to waste your time. Your time is extremely precious, 45 days before the examination. So we'll be going right into the facts. Second category of news stories is literature based. First important thing that happened in the past 12 months was the passing of the National Manuscripts Bill of 2023. So the idea is that the government wanted to ensure that we have a proper law in place to preserve manuscripts, which India has in thousands. Now, how do you define a manuscript? Manuscript has to be a document written on paper, bark, cloth, and should be at least 75 years old, having historical content and aesthetic value. Again, do remember the 75 years clause. It is said that if you follow these conditions, India has about 10 million or 1 crore manuscripts in about 80 ancient languages. Also, some of the manuscripts have given wealth of knowledge not just to India but around the world. For example, the Bakshali manuscript, which is an ancient mathematical text, is said to be the earliest example of the use of zero. As you know, zero was invented in India. This is where it was first used in our history. What does the bill say? The bill establishes a 10-member National Manuscript Authority. It will be a body that will make policy about preservation of manuscripts. This body will be led by the Union Minister of Culture, who will act as a chairperson of this authority. Apart from this, the government, as you know, has also been running a national mission for manuscripts. It was established way back in 2003 by Ministry of Tourism and Culture. The government of India, like many other governments around the world, is in a process of digitalizing as many old records as possible so as to secure them. India also is trying to digitalize as many manuscripts as possible as they are found from time to time. So far, about 3.3 lakh manuscripts have already been digitalized by the government under this initiative. About 70,000 of those are available for public access, which you can also see. Similarly, one more news about manuscript that was in the news was something called Gyana Mayurji. What exactly is this? This is a very old palm manuscript from 18th century discovered in northern Italy. Now, if it was discovered in northern Italy, why are we reading it here for our UPSC examination? Because the important point is this manuscript is written in the Tamil language. Now, imagine something that is written in the Tamil language of 18th century being found in northern Italy. That indicates that there was a cultural connection of languages between Europe and Asia, specifically Italy and India or Roman Empire of that time, for a very, very long time. This manuscript tells us about the period of its origin, about how the society, religion worked at that point of time. You don't have to go into detail of it. Just remember, found in northern Italy, the name of the manuscript and the language being Tamil. That is what makes it important. This is the manuscript that was found there in northern part of Italy. Next, we come to the category of sculptures. Now, a lot of important sculptures were in the news this year, around the entire year. None more important and in the news than Sengal. As you know, the new parliament building was inaugurated. This is where the new parliament now works. One of the things that made the most news was a Sengal. Now, interestingly, most of the people, and not most but all the people, none of them would have heard about Sengal before the concept of the new parliament building was inaugurated. But now there is a lot of detail about Sengal, its history, that has come to light once again. Now, what exactly is this? I'm sure all of you know this. This is a very, very historic spectre. It's considered as a symbol of transfer of power. It has been installed in the new parliament building. Now, the history is that Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru accepted the Sengal when there was a transfer of power from British to India. This acceptance was on 14th of August 1947. It was done through Adhinam of Tamil Nadu. Now again, this is considered as a sign of power being transferred from the hands of the British to an independent country. If you go back How did it originate? Its origin goes back to the Chola dynasty. The tradition of the Chola dynasty was about transfer of power being done through the passage of this spectre through a symbolic transfer of power from one king to the successor. So when one king used to retire, used to pass on the power, usually in their own family, they used to pass on this spectre called Sengol, and that is how the transfer of power was considered as being official. Now this spectre, and I'll show you the photo, I'm sure you would have already seen this. At the top of it, as you can see here, it's a representation of Nandi, which is considered to be a mark of justice. As you know, the king has the primary responsibility to deliver and ensure justice to all the people living in the king's territory. Lord Shiva's sacred bull, that is Nandi, sits at the top. Also the Chola dynasty, I'm sure you would have all read about Chola dynasty in detail in ancient history, so I will not go into detail of Chola dynasty. Ancient medieval history, you would have covered that already. Do remember about Sengol, it's very important. The word Sengol comes from the Tamil word called Semai, which means righteousness. Again, righteousness means how the king should behave, ideals for the king, how the transfer of power should be taken seriously, and how the king is responsible towards the subjects. Next sculpture, again important, was displayed at the G20 summit when most of the big leaders of the world were in India. That is the Nataraj statue. So a 27 feet statue of Nataraj was installed at the G20 summit at the Bharat Mandapam. This is why it again has come in the news. The design of this Nataraj statue was inspired by three Nataraj idols kept at different places. One at the Thilai Nataraj temple, second at the Uma Maheshwara temple, and third at the Brihadeshwara temple. These three designs were compiled, they were combined to then come up with a new design of the Nataraj statue. As you know, Nataraj is another name of Lord Shiva. It's a depiction of Lord Shiva in his divine cosmic dancer form when he's dancing out of joy. This is what the statue depicts. It's the dance form that is being performed is called Tandav. As you can see here, this is the statue that we are talking about. Became very famous at the G20 summit. At the G20 summit, India made sure that we exhibit many other art forms, many other sculptures that are very famous in India. For example, there are other art forms that were exhibited in the G20 summit, starting with Lambani art. Now what is Lambani art? Again, I'll first show you the photo. This is what Lambani art is. Many of you would have seen this in your homes, in your households. There are different types of designs that are done. It's usually used as a carpet or a rug in different areas. So Lambani art, the largest display of this art form was seen at the G20 summit. It's an embroidery form which uses these bright colors. It involves colorful threads, and again there are small pieces which are stitched together. As you can see here, there are small pieces which are stitched together. This is one piece, this is one more piece, the third piece, the fourth piece. All of these are stitched together to bring out the last final product. This tradition of embroidery has been passed on from India to many other parts of the world. We have exported this in the past to Europe, West Central Asia, etc. Also, how does this name come into the picture? This is also important. Lambini, or they are also called as the Lambadis or the Banjaras. They are the nomadic tribe. You must be familiar with the name Banjaras specifically. They came from Afghanistan to Rajasthan and then spread to other parts of India. It is their indigenous art form, it is their indigenous embroidery form that then got spread to different parts of the country. Next, another art form which became famous because it was presented by our Prime Minister when he went on his trip to Greece. So when an Indian Prime Minister went to Greece, as the Prime Ministers, presidents usually do, they present something of historical cultural value. So our Prime Minister presented three different artworks to the Greek Prime Minister that became famous. First was a Meghalaya shawl, second was a Dokra art, and third was a Bidri art. Well, I'll first show you the photo. So this is the Meghalaya shawl, this is the Dokra art, and this is the Bidri silverware work. These three again became important. So what are these three? Meghalaya shawls. Very famous in Meghalaya. They are mainly used by the Khasi Jaintia tribes. It is used as a symbol of power. So people who are higher up in hierarchy usually want this kind of a shawl. It's an indication of their family's wealth and prestige. Then the Dokra art form is very old. It is in fact India's prehistoric art form. In fact, it is said that the dancing girl of Mohenjo-daro was also an example of this art form only. It is named after Dhokar Dharam, that is a nomadic Indian tribe that is usually supposed to be lived in the eastern and the central regions of this country. Do remember this, it's extremely important for the examination. Then the Bidri artwork, very famous in Karnataka, very famous in the time of the Bahmani Sultans. It's Bidri's silverware is more famous, but there are other forms of metals also that are used now. So it's more of metal handicraft where there are very small intricate things made out of metal by turning them into different forms. This is that example. Then there are some other important news from the field of health that were in the news and that have the probability of being asked in the prelims exam. For example, Niti Aayog published its state health index. That is an index which ranks different states based mainly on three parameters or three domains rather. Health outcomes, governance and information, key inputs and processes. This ranking is published by the Niti Aayog in collaboration with the Union Health Ministry and the World Bank. So what they do is they take into consideration 24 different health indicators. There are different categories of states and union territories, larger states, small state, union territories, in which they rank depending upon the performance of different states. Now, usually in these kind of cases, in the prelims examination, there is a little chance of ranking being asked, but yes, they can ask this part. That is, what are the health domains, or what are the different domains that are taken into consideration. Also, this is an important piece of information because, for example, if the statement says that Niti Aayog publishes state health index in collaboration with WHO, you might think WHO makes more sense, World Health Organization, right? But that is not true. It's published in collaboration with the World Bank. So be careful with these kind of important details. Among the larger states, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Telangana were at the top. At the bottom, they were Bihar, UP and Madhya Pradesh. Among the smaller states, Tripura, Sikkim and Goa did the best. Amongst union territories, Lakshadweep did best, while interestingly, Delhi, that is India's national capital, was right at the bottom. These were the findings of Niti Aayog's State Health Index. Then there were other findings of the National Family Health Survey number 5. Now, before we go into this, please understand this topic is more important for the mains exam, because there's a lot of data that comes in from the National Family Health Survey, health related data about stunting, about obesity, about different types of health issues, mortality rate of different types. So it's more important for the mains examination to be true. But from the prelims exam also, you have to remember the trends. Trends as in, is it increasing or is it decreasing? So rather than remembering the exact number, for example, remember that the total fertility rate is declining. So if the statement is in the past few years, total fertility rate of women in India is on a decline, that will be a true statement. Even if you don't remember exact 2.2 or 2.0, do remember it's declining. Similarly, contraceptive prevalence rate has increased, means the use of contraceptives in India, birth control methods is increasing. Even if you don't remember the exact number, for the prelims exam, they might not ask you exact percentage. They will ask you, or they will confirm with you, is the trend right or wrong. So do remember the trends, that is more important. Is it increasing, is it decreasing, so on and so forth. Similarly, there are other statements or other findings of this survey about stunting, about women having below average health standards as compared to males. Another important health concern that was a lot in the news in the last 12 months in different fields was anemia. Now, anemia was in the news for a lot of reasons, and you will see one more news about it. One of the reasons why it was in the news was with relation to National Family Health Survey. The government announced that in the National Family Health Survey number 6, that is the one that is going on right now. Government has dropped questions on anemia. Do remember this. Why? The government says that the current method being used to identify people who are suffering from anemia does not seem to be accurate and is not giving the correct outcome. That is why anemia now will not be a part of National Family Health Survey number 6 going forward. Rather, the government will collect the data about anemia from Diet and Biomarkers Survey of India. That is separate. What is anemia? As you know, it's a blood related disease. It's a disease where number of red blood cells or hemoglobin is lower than normal. When you don't have enough red blood cells, the result is you feel weak, you don't have enough energy, you might feel dizzy also. There are different ways in which you can catch anemia. One of the most common ways in which people catch anemia is iron deficiency. It also depends on the health, on the meals that you are taking, your eating patterns, and that is why the government of India tries to ensure that iron supplements are provided through Anganwadi as well. In midday meal also through government schools, the government of India tries to ensure that iron tablets are given to the children. Apart from iron deficiency, anemia can also be caused due to sickle cell issue or thalassemia, which is usually inherited condition, which is not something that is in your hands. Another health related news from the WHO. WHO has launched something called the SPECS 2030 initiative. SPECS means the spectacle. So this is the initiative launched by WHO. The idea is to have quality, affordable, people-centric refractive error services. So a lot of people who don't have the perfect eyesight need help in the form of spectacles. Either they can't afford it or the condition that they have is not detected properly. That is something that WHO wants to correct. The target under this initiative is 40 percentage point increase in effective coverage of refractive error by 2030. In India, over 100 million people lack access to eye care and glasses, and this initiative wants to bring a positive change. This is what this initiative is about. SPECS stands for, S is here, improve access to refractive services. Then P, build capacity of personnel, improve population education, reduce the cost, and strengthen surveillance. So as you can see, the Indian government is not alone that makes full forms and short forms. Even international institutions are learning from India, and even WHO has come up with this SPECS initiative. Next, health related news. Pompe disease in the news because India's first ever patient of the Pompe disease died recently. What is this disease all about? It's a glycogen storage disease type 2. What does it mean? It means it occurs when a person inherits 2 copies of abnormal gene. These affected genes are responsible for producing an enzyme called GAA in the body. Now, to be honest, these kind of questions are hard to be asked, or they don't really have a lot of probability of being asked by the UPSC, because these random diseases, they can be in the news quite a lot. You can't really remember all of them, but to be on the safe side, I would just advise you to remember just a couple of facts if you can. That will help you to cover it up just in case it is asked. But just because one patient of this disease has died in India does not make it a very big important news as such to be covered. But again, we are still covering it for the sake of it, because just in case the UPSC does ask this. So this is the detail about the Pompe disease right here. Another disease in the news, not specifically for India, that is the Noma disease, NOMA. Why is it in the news? Because the WHO has added this in the list of neglected tropical diseases. As the name suggests, neglected tropical diseases are those diseases which specifically occur in tropical areas, which have some of the poorest countries in the world, mainly in Africa. Because the people suffering from this disease are very poor, they can't afford a lot of treatment. Pharmaceutical companies also have not invested a lot of money in finding the cure for such diseases. That has led to a lot of issues. So there's a list of those diseases that the WHO maintains called the neglected tropical diseases, and now the Noma disease is also a part of it. Also, if you look at this neglected tropical disease as a category, there are a large number of other diseases which you will not find in other parts of the world. For example, there are diseases such as river blindness that you will see. WHO has taken an initiative called the new roadmap for 21 to 2030. This aims to eradicate a set of 20 diseases by 2030. So it's not that WHO is not doing anything about it. They have identified these diseases, they have made a list of it, and they would like to eradicate all of them by 2030 at max. Let's see if they're able to achieve this, but this is not a news related to India. It's a news related to WHO specifically. Now coming back to India, another health related news is the rollout of cervical cancer vaccine that is called Cervavac. Now Cervavac is not the first cervical vaccine to be rolled out. There were others as well, but the rollout of this vaccine, the more option that we have, the better it is, because it will reduce the cost in the market. Now the government of India has also started immunization campaign against HPV. This was started in mid 2023. The vaccine that is given for cervical cancer is very similar to hepatitis B. Now, this is a form of cancer that affects women in very large numbers. It can start from a young age. That is why girls between 9 and 14 years of age under this program will be vaccinated free in 3 phases by the government over the next 3 years. Once these 9 to 14 years old are covered to the government satisfaction, the government will then make this vaccine a part of India's routine immunization program for 9-year-old girls. Routine immunization program means the routine vaccines that you have, that you take on a regular basis, we'll make it a part of it so that the next lot of girls who are now about to become 9-year-old, they will automatically get it. We are first covering those who are above 9, so 9 to 14, and then we will be focusing on those girls which are not 9 right now. This vaccine specifically is developed by Serum Institute of India, similar to the hepatitis B vaccine. Again, please remember, this is not the first ever vaccine in the world. There have been others as well. Just that because this one is being made in India, it will be more affordable, it will be much more available in the Indian market. Also, this will be included in the National Immunization Program once the government covers all the other 9 to 14-year-old girls who are right now unvaccinated under this. It is the 4th most common form of cancer found amongst women. It actually starts at the cells of the cervix, which is the lower end of the uterus of the women. As I said earlier, there are other vaccines available as well. Because this particular virus has different strains, there are different forms of vaccines. For example, there is a non-valent vaccine which protects against 9 strains of this virus. Then we have quadrivalent. Quadrivalent means it protects against 4 different strains of the virus. And then there is bivalent as well that will protect against 16 strains. You have to tell me in the comment section, this Cervavax that is being rolled out by the government, that protects against how many strains of HPV? Homework is, tell me in the comment section, this vaccine that is being produced by the Serum Institute of India, that protects the women against how many different strains of the HPV? 2, 4, more or less. Next, health related news from the state of Kerala. Kerala launched something called Amrit. Amrit stands for Antimicrobial Resistance Intervention for Total Health. Now, as you know, India has been suffering from the problem of antimicrobial resistance for a long time now. The problem being that medicines, even antibiotics, are freely available in India. You go to a medical store, you can buy whatever medicine that you want, which should not be the case. It has led to overdose of medicines, overdose of antibiotics that has caused antimicrobial resistance in a very large scale. So under Operation Amrit, the government of Kerala has implemented the original H1 rule, meaning that prescription of the doctor will be necessary to purchase any antibiotic whatsoever. Kerala is the first state to enforce such a rule. The rules for selling of the drugs of different types are already given in the Drugs and Cosmetics Rule of 1945. I'll show you those as well. So basically, in simple terms, Without prescription, you will not be given any antibiotic vaccine. In Kerala, being the most literate state of India, it's easier to implement these kind of initiatives because the people understand the issue of antimicrobial resistance and people understand the idea behind it as well. Also, since the doctor-patient ratio in Kerala is extremely good, even in the villages, that makes it easier to implement this rule. Because, for example, if you need an antibiotic but you don't have a doctor nearby who can prescribe it to you, then it becomes a problem. So availability of doctors is necessary to implement this, and Kerala has been able to do this. Now, you should know that the original H1 rule of 2011 is the one that has been implemented by Kerala. The original rule was that no antibiotic will be available without a prescription. Now what happened was, when this rule was first introduced in 2011, that you cannot buy any antibiotic without doctor prescription, medical stores were not happy, people were not happy. So government in 2013 had changed it. The government had said, okay, first line antibiotics will be available, second and third line antibiotics will be available only after doctor's prescription. So there are different levels of antibiotics. First line antibiotic, the most common ones. Modified rules say first line of antibiotic you can buy without a doctor prescription also. Second and third line of antibiotics will be available only after doctor's prescription. These were the modified rules. What Kerala has done, Kerala has implemented the first, that is the original model. No line of antibiotic medicines will be available to anyone. Doesn't matter it is a first line, second line or third line of antibiotics. Also 1945 drugs and cosmetics rules of India have different categories of medicines. Schedule H that say that only these kind of prescription labels which are visible on the top left corner of the label, these kind of medicines should only be given if the doctor prescribes it. This is the symbol of prescription. Schedule H medicine should not be available without doctor's prescription. Then there's Schedule P1. It means that the pack size of the drugs should be specified. If you're buying a syrup, how many mLs does it have? It should be specifically mentioned there. Then there's Schedule Y of the rules. The Schedule Y talks about how there has to be an approval from the government that has to be taken before you sell any medicine in India. These are all the different schedules of this 1945 rules. Last topic for this class today is Mission Utkarsh, related to again the problem of anemia. So this is a mission launched by the Ministry of Ayush and Ministry of Women and Child Development. What they are doing is they are trying to implement Ayurvedic methods to prevent anemia in girls aged 14 to 18 years. So specifically adolescent girls from 14 to 18 that have a higher chance of iron deficiency. To ensure there is Ayurvedic intervention, that they are given all the supplement necessary. Mission Utkarsh has been launched. Do remember this as well. It is right now launched in 5 aspirational districts across 5 different states in Assam, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Maharashtra and Rajasthan. This brings me to the end of our class number 1 of our quick revision series. As you can see, no time wastage, just discussing the facts that are important. It's the beginning of a new series. There will be 40 lectures uploaded every single day from now onwards at 6 p.m. You can get a PDF of this also. All that you need to do is join the Telegram group. The link of the Telegram group is given in the description of the video. Join that and you can get the PDF as well for your revision. Do join me for the next class tomorrow at 6 p.m. where we will be discussing more such important news stories from different subjects. Thank you so much. Have a good day ahead. Bye-bye. Jai Hind.